Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Training Tuesday webinar. So everyone has been muted so that we can all not hear everybody else's ongoings in their house. And we want to be able to hear the presentation without any distractions. So what we're going to do is have a question and answer at the very end, and you can do that through the chat functionality. Today's webinar topic, we're going to be discussing tilt-up inserts. So this introductory training is going to look at ground release systems, why were they developed, the most popular inserts, the features and benefits of the stay-in-place reset, some edge lift anchor applications, estimating the number of inserts to panels, and then the use and application of Strongback. So sit back and gain some knowledge with us that you can put to use. And for those of you who have questions, like I said, we will be conducting this brief question answer at the very end through that chat functionality in Zoom. So just go ahead and type in those questions and I will ask them to be answered, and we'll go from there. You can find the chat button within your Zoom navigation toolbar. So now I'm excited to introduce our host, Chuck Hoke. He's our National Training Manager, but he also brings numerous other titles, 20+ years of experience to the table within Dayton Superior specifically, as, like I said, a trainer. He's been a product manager and all kinds of sales managers. And before that, he worked as a dealer for several more years. He is here to provide us with his product knowledge and expertise. So without further ado, let's get started. Chuck?
Thank you. Today we're going to talk about tilt-up lifting inserts. And as always, this presentation is intended for training purposes only. For any technical specifications for the products mentioned in this training, refer back to www.daytonsuperior.com. As I said, we are going to talk about the lifting systems for tilt-up products. A little bit of brief history about tilt-up lifting systems. Typically in the past, they started out using coiled inserts with lift plates and coil bolts. To attach it was a long and lengthy process. To take it apart was even longer because they had to climb a ladder to actually climb up the panels, to actually remove the bolts, to actually release the lifting hardware from the inserts. This took a lot of time. And as we moved on, time equals money. There's no way of getting around it. So we saw many new features coming about. We started out with our Superior ground lifting systems. The first system we came up with was the Ground Release 2 system. This was a system that was developed by Dayton Superior. It was the first remote release system so that you could release it from the ground. And when Dayton acquired Richmond Screw Anchor in 1998, they actually ended up getting the gyro tilt system from Richmond Screw Anchor. Was Richmond's anchor to a ground release system. The differences between the two systems are, one is directional and one is non-directional. Directional means that it has to be facing the top or bottom of the panel. Non-directional obviously doesn't mean it has any direction. It can be lifted 360-degree rotation. You can see the directional here, recess voids versus the non-directional. The ground release system here and the gyro system, both systems actually achieve the same thing. And they both get installed in the same manner. Basically, you set your rebar cage, put your inserts in place, tie them off to your rebar cage, pour your concrete. But once you let your concrete cure, once you go to find your inserts, you will find a slightly discolored area in the slab that you would actually, that's where your recess void is. You then hit the recess void with the hammer to chip it out, and you can pull the recess void out, leaving the void for your lifting hardware to be attached. And that was the same thing for the gyro system, just had a different lifting system, lifting hardware for that system. And that was basically a non-directional 360-degree rotation. Well, as we went through the years of working with those inserts, those old inserts used to be an 8-ton and a 4-ton system. So we were limited as to how big the panels could be. So now, under the Dayton Superior lifting systems, we have our directional fleet lift inserts, our T110 and our T275, using also our T120 hardware. The T110 facelift insert is our workhorse of the industry, been around since about the mid-1990s. Came into place, it's got a wire cage supporting a recess that is a 2-piece recess that will basically be cracked like an egg to pop open and remove from the concrete, revealing the anchor that can be attached to the T120. The T120 lifting hardware typically goes into place very easy. What you do is you actually make sure the recess void is facing the top or bottom of the panel is the first thing you need to do, because that's mandatory because it is directional. You will slide the engagement pin back, opening the cavity of the lifting hardware to slide right over the insert cast in place in the concrete. You then close that pin back down. Now that pin should be facing the north or the top of the concrete panel. Reason being is you want gravity to help you when you go to release this product. So with that facing the top of the panel, once the panel is in place here, the erector will then set the panel. It will relieve the pressure that's on that lifting hardware, and that'll enable you to pull that pin down with a rope or chain connected to it. Basically, we also have our lifting systems. We had our T110. Well, in January this year, we actually released our T110H Gen 2 insert. It uses the same fleet style insert that our T110 system uses. It's a high strength forged anchor, set back 1/4 of an inch. Basically, the biggest difference here is we have eliminated the metal cage that will support this anchor in place. We now replace that with a big plastic foot that actually gives it a good stance, so that it will stand erect and can be tied off. The head of the anchor, basically the cap that reforms the recess, the void, is our new cup style recess void. What it is that the cup part of the recess void is going to stay in place, cast in the concrete. The only thing that is going to be removed is the blue component of the insert, which can be achieved by just taking a screwdriver, hitting it with a hammer, penetrating through the blue cap, and then popping that right out of the concrete. As you can see, we have all the test data on it based off of concrete strength and structural thickness of the panel. All this data is available inside the tilt-up handbook and on DaytonSuperior.com. We also have our T275 lifting system. This is a two-legged system for a lot of contractors who like having their inserts with two separate legs coming down for ease of access and tying off in rebar cages. These inserts, this insert is typically available in 7¼ inch to 12 inch. This is by far the strongest insert in the marketplace. Right now, it is currently limited to what we can take it to because of the capacity of the lifting hardware itself, the T120. But this also has that cup style recess void in place here, where it's going to remain, and the cup is going to remain in the concrete, giving you a nice smooth side for the lifting hardware to actually slide in and make the attachment to it. You adjust basically this anchor comes in two different sizes, a 5-inch and 7-inch, and it is adjustable by attaching different feet, or basically plastic bases, to those anchors on the bottom. Now, as you can see, the anchor typically will yield anything from 20,000 to about 24,000 pounds is what it'll max out at. This anchor also has a couple of nice accessories that go along with it. We have the T275 base plates, which actually help when you're doing sandwich panels, so the legs won't penetrate the insulation. And then we also have a T275 patch cap. This patch cap is an excellent option in lieu of grouting the recess voids. After the fact, the strength that cap will hold on to the insert is phenomenal. And if you put a bead of silicone on the bottom side of it prior to attaching it to the wall, you will give yourself a leak-proof connection. Edge lift is always doable. We basically have our T110E edge lift application. This is going to use the same flat plate design that we have for our T110 anchor, and we're going to go with a P92 FEW, a 10-ton. And what this basically does is it gives you an insert with a shear plate already attached. And you would attach a recess void to this and cast it in on the edge of your panel. You can also, if you feel like you need a little bit additional anchorage within the panel, you can actually put a tension bar in place and actually have that help anchor the anchor in the concrete slab. It actually gives you more pull-out strength within that concrete slab. Now, how many inserts are you going to use for a panel? First thing you want to do is calculate the weight of your concrete panel. We typically use 100 pounds per cubic foot. So you're going to take the length times the width times the thickness. You're going to come up with a cubic footage of concrete in that foot and then multiply it by 150 pounds per cubic foot, giving you a total weight of the panel. You then take whatever the panel thickness is, calculate out with this, for this example here, we're at 7¼ inches. So in tension, we're going to have 17,910 pounds of capacity from that insert at a 2-to-1 safety factor. So what we do is we take the weight of the panel, divide it by the 17,910, come up with 4.46 inserts. Now, in tilt-up, we always have our inserts cast either 1 per panel, 2 per panel, 4 per panel, 8 per panel and 16. We do not use any other configurations of 3. So if we have 4.46 inserts, we're going to round up to 8 inserts are going to be required to pick this panel. When you're looking at panels with door openings or multiple doors and windows, what you're going to do is calculate the weight of the whole panel, just like we did in the last example, and then calculate the opening area, what the weight of that concrete weighs for that opening area, and deduct it from the weight of the panel. In this case here, this panel here weighs 70,000 pounds. We come up with 20,210 pounds per insert. And at that point, we're now looking at 3.5 inserts for this panel. So we end up with 4 inserts per panel. A couple of things here that you want to make sure, is this safe? I'm going to give you one word of advice: never, ever, ever weld to an insert. You don't want that. You don't want that liability. Occasionally, we will have inserts that will actually get lost or go AWOL in the panel when they pour the concrete. Well, that does happen from time to time. So we usually recommend that every project has at least one what they call emergency lift plate. There's other names that they've been called panic plates, and there's a few other names which I'm not going to go into that they're used for what they're called. But typically it is designed for when an insert can't be found, you can actually attach this plate to the face of the concrete and pick the panel then using this plate. Then remove it and use it again if you so need to do so. Some of the rigging and panel, some of the rigging information that typically has come through our per preview here over the last couple of years is there's been some changes in the industry and how they actually want to lift panels and how the erectors can lift panels. Most erectors already know this, and they're usually responsible. And typically what we're looking at here, in the old style, the R4E, for example, we used to have 2 minor beams and 1 major beam. Well, the new is an R4EM, and this actually is a modified rigging. So what they've done is they've actually eliminated those minor beams and actually had other cables and bull blocks. So a lot of this rigging is all done typically by the erector. It's just one of those things that we like to talk to our dealers on, so when they go out to the job site, they're very confident in how things are progressing in and along for their project. And you can see just the changes that have been made. We've eliminated need for a lot of beams that are required on this, and the only thing that does is you have to now be very careful not to cross any cables or tangle any cables. Always want to make sure that the cable length that is being used is as long as you can possibly go. You don't want it to be too short. A shorter cable means you're going to increase the stress put on the panel because you're actually decreasing the angle of the pick. So what will happen is you're going to be putting the insert in shear more so than tension. So that with that issue being taken care of, you want to make sure that the cable lengths are the proper lengths. Strongbacks. On my best analogy of a strongback is it's a necessary evil on a job site. When you initially bid these, you never know exactly how many you're going to need or where you're going to need them. They're predominantly used as a reinforcement, basically like a splint, to help the concrete panel when you pick it so that you don't crack it from the bending stresses. You can either have a single pickup insert, which we use what we call a T1 insert, or it can be a double insert, Strongback insert, which is typically closer to the door openings or window openings. And usually you start with a double and then everything else will be a single going forward. Sometimes you have to also use it as a crutch. So you can see here, we have a T2 installed just above the door openings and then T1s up above and below it. Those are basically just holding pieces. It's holding lumber in place here to help support that panel in an upright position until the adjacent panel is placed. Some other examples of what we see with Strongback, some of them can get fairly long and lengthy depending on the height of the panel. It can cover from floor to top. And that's primarily being put in place here, all because of stresses on the concrete panel, so that when you pick it up, the panel is going to want to flex during the pick, and you want to make sure that it's staying basically flat and straight, so you're not cracking the concrete. The inserts that go in place that we use for this are a little bit different. It's a T1 or a T2. They are a standard coil thread insert, only 1 inch in diameter, a little bit different. Depending on where you're going to use 1 or a 2, they will be going in place here. We also have our T13D. This is a post-installed anchor in case we miss one of these anchors going in place here. This actually works just like our T13 as an expansion anchor. The only difference is the head of it actually is a coupler. And the coupler is actually threaded with a coil thread. And this is 100% reusable. The only thing you'll have to swap out is the anchor or the expansion anchor part down at the bottom of it. We also have our bearing plates. I usually recommend that these get used on some of the bigger Strongbacks, primarily because of the Strongback is heavy, and once it's erected in place, it's going to be heavy. You want the crane to actually carry the weight. And here you can attach this to the crane. It'll actually attach to the Strongback, holding it in place. When you remove the Strongback and have it attached to this lifting hardware, the crane is doing all of the work. And that is it for today. I want to thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact either Chuck Oak at DaytonSuperior.com or training@DaytonSuperior.com. And Heidi is going to keep the line open a little bit for any chat messages, questions coming in. And we will respond to those as we move forward. Heidi?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have one question. Was wondering if the extensions exist for the T110H to adjust the height.
The T110H height is adjusted. It's sold by the panel thickness. Right now, every panel height has a specific insert and base associated with it.
Okay, great. So if anybody has any questions and they don't want it to go through the main chat room to everyone to see, Heidi Reese is my name. You can just go straight to me and I'll say it. Thank you, all of you guys saying thank you to us. We appreciate it. Anything else? All right, well, again, thank you for taking the time, as Chuck said, to learn about all of this. And we hope that you have enjoyed and learned more about the topic. This webinar has been recorded and will be put out on YouTube platform by 3 p.m. today. And then an email will be sent to let you know that that has taken place as well, with Chuck's contact information that he just shared with you. Should you want to discuss any further training needs for your company, you can also discuss that with him. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.